Everyone. And without further ado, I'd like to call on Mr. Mishra to please come and share his keynote address with us.
Thank you, Shweta. And morning, everyone. Ms. Reddy, my colleague, Mr. Malik, sitting in the audience, who had once a lot more to do than I had with the climate change issue because he was the biggest obstacle. But he was great at it and managed to remove many of them. Ladies and gentlemen, it's an opportune moment to talk about the issues relating to climate change because just, I think, 3 days back we had the COP30 conclusion. I'm a bit of a pessimist as far as organizations like COPs are concerned, UNFCCC. If anything, they have failed us. And if you look at the resolutions of COP30 recently, the only thing that has happened, according to me, from Paris to Brazil is the English has gotten better. Good drafting. It doesn't make sense. No matter what you say, you've created an adaptation fund as a new tool and you think that's a great success. There's no money in that fund. So what use is that fund? And we don't seem to see the seriousness. So I have always been a believer that if global help comes, it's very welcome. If it doesn't, it is up to the country to handle it. And there is, to my mind, no doubt on that. Let me put emphasis on two things to begin with. Climate change, as Shweta was mentioning, is for real. Some big names who do not accept this do so at the peril of themselves and the rest of the world. But the fight against climate change and its adverse impact, I'm sure, can continue even without them. She mentioned that last 5 years, I think you said 5 years, things have changed. Scientists across the globe have been talking about adverse impact for the last 25-30 years. What changed in the 5 years that you mentioned is that suddenly you had floods in most of Europe, you saw America flooded, and then they realized we never seen this before. What is happening? So that is when the realization came. It takes an adversity for humanity to recognize the danger that it is facing, which is so imminent and so blatantly present, but we just refuse. We close our eyes. That is why it is the last 5 years became relevant. The second point that I would like to emphasize is that any adverse event of climate change will adversely impact. If it is there for real, it will have an impact. And none of the impacts are going to be positive. It's going to be a negative impact for everyone. Many may say, and it's a fact actually, that climate change adverse impact is a great leveler. It impacts the big and mighty, it impacts the low and weak, it impacts the rich, the poor, everyone. But there are some segments of the society or the world which get disproportionately adversely impacted. So this disproportionate impact actually comes to those who are vulnerable. The most vulnerable countries get impacted. Within the countries, the most vulnerable communities get impacted. Within the community, it is the women and children who get impacted most. In fact, any adverse impact, not just climate change, affects them the most. So, we are at a position where, whether it is a heat wave or a flood or a water scarcity, it is the women and children who are the forefront of bearing the brunt. In Delhi today, we have this issue of air quality. It's not just Delhi, it's actually the entire Indo-Gangetic plain, but Delhi finds a place because it's the capital. One of the big impacts is on children. Children who have done nothing to create this. They have no role, but they are adversely impacted. And we seem to be going on and on in trying to, blame everyone possible and trying to say that I am doing my best. None of us have done our best. We have let down everything. The problem is when, as a society, you think that you can live with all the comforts you want and yet have a cleaner air, it's never going to happen. Comforts cannot coexist with this. Somebody will have to give up something. You don't want to give up driving in your car. You don't want to give up having 3 cars instead of 1. You don't want to give up any comfort, but you want clean air. Where on earth is it going to come from? And add to this the inefficiencies of our system, and you have a peculiar situation where you are very, very upset about the air quality and equally upset if even one comfort is taken away from you. We have to realize the realities of life. But be that as it may, we'll talk about it later. Climate change as a whole, globally, there is recognition. Globally, there's an attempt. India has done comparatively well, whether it's NDCs or it's a transition. Although I am not a believer that mere energy transition is a solution to climate change. That can be one solution. It can't be the whole solution. But the world always prefers the easiest route out. And energy transition is not just the easiest. It has money in it. And therefore, that is the fastest moving item in tackling climate change today. We need to look at other things very seriously. There are 2 critical legs that the entire climate change in developing countries stands on. One is technology and the other is finance. But if you look at the world carefully today, nobody is willing to give up technology. And the cost of technology is so high that developing countries cannot afford to have it. And what was envisaged was that in order to be able to afford to have it, the developed world will give you finance. That has not happened. My own take is it will not happen. There is no stake. Somebody who's had the best of the world, why should he sacrifice for somebody who's not have? So therefore, the paradox is that they are still telling you that you reduce your emission. We've done what we wanted to do. So that is the level of iniquity at the global thinking. Somehow that, in India, we've had a culture which supports this thought. I think we need to nurture that. And I'm sure climate change is not about, big slogans and big words. It's about science. There's nothing else that can handle it. So if you look at the adverse impact on children in education, it's so obvious everywhere, and the Director of Education fortunately is here. And let me actually take advantage of her presence here and begin by saying that we think that we are experts at finding solution. So first, what do you do when an adverse thing happens? Close schools, close colleges, ask people to stop driving, ask people to stop being indoors. All don'ts. We don't have a single do. We think hybrid teaching mode is enough for children. But look at the children's perspective. A, the access is poor. B, the attention levels are so low in a hybrid mode that the learning gets impacted. Add to that the lack of resilience in the school system itself, which we'll need to build. UNICEF has done a study, not that I totally agree with it, but they say that there would be about 350 million children by 2050. Look at the volume and the large mass that you will have, which you need to cater to. And heat wave, for example, let's just take one example. It impacts, I'm told, close to 54 million children. What does it mean? It means learning outputs are low. It means attendance drops. It means the child's future is in danger. So we need to look at methods which can alleviate all this. By merely saying that one solution here or one solution there is going to work, I don't think we are moving ahead too much. Similarly, let us look at the health impacts. The biggest casualty because of climate change is maternal child health. Whether it is women's health, whether it is pregnant women's problem, whether it is children. I mean, if you want a country to progress, the child must not only live, it must thrive. Life has not been threatened so far, but post-birth development gets severely impacted because of climate change adverse impact. So we need to look at it very seriously. You know, initially, India's problem was communicable diseases. We transitioned from communicable diseases to non-communicable diseases. Everybody calls us a capital of diabetes. But with the population that we have, we'll always be a capital for everything. And that's no big deal. But then we transitioned from communicable to non-communicable diseases. Now we are suddenly stuck with a disease profile where there is no prediction. Respiratory diseases and mental health, one of the largest emerging issues. So we are in a very, very critical juncture. And these are realities staring at us. So what do we do? I think first and foremost, globally this has to be recognized, funded, finance and technology must flow in, globe must dive. But can India afford to wait for the global goods to be delivered? I don't think so. The answer is a clear no. Therefore, we need to generate our own resources to actually fight this crisis. Now, the resources will always be meager. So the next big question is, what do you focus on? Do you focus on mitigation and reducing emission and trying to wait for a time when things will improve? Or do you focus on adaptation? For India's story, my own feeling is adaptation is the only solution. From agriculture to science, it is adaptation. And we need to get away from the world view of mitigation. Of course, mitigation will continue to happen. Industries will continue to innovate. They will continue to get technologies, reduce emissions. All that will happen. Some will do it because they think it's important. Some will do it because carbon trading will get them some money. I mean, it could be anything. But it is the adaptation which government and society needs to focus on. And honestly speaking, it's not just about generating resources. The biggest critical issue in India today is using resources in a manner which is good and which gets you returns. You have to look at judicious utilization of resources. I'll just narrate a small story here. 2018, we wrote the National Clean Air Program and we thought we had clinched it. Everything would now become clean. Fortunately, we also had a lot of money. There was no dearth of finance. No state has spent more than 20% of the resources. So, unless resources are put to judicious use, how do you get it? And the future will completely depend on only one thing, and that is how well India is able to innovate on these issues. You will have to have indigenous technologies, indigenous thought process, and innovation to do this. The resources we need are largely to build a resilient health system, a resilient education system. And resilience not only just in the system, resilience in the infrastructure. Unless you have resilience in the infrastructure, you will not be able to actually withhold the future. And for all this, one thing that is very critical, and thanks Shweta for pointing that out, is we need to educate our children about what the crisis is. Many of us seniors, some ignore, some accept. The child must know the truth. The child must know that this is the crisis and this is the solution. Let him or her grow up to be intelligent enough to distinguish between what is bad for him or her or good. And our education system needs to imbibe the values of climate change and the adverse impact into them. But the bigger tragedy actually is in terms of policy perspectives. And that is where the entire problem lies. We know the problem. I think most well meaning people, leave aside non experts like me, know the solution also. Nobody sees the urgency. How do you go about it? It's not that today we don't know what to do. We just don't want to do. Because we think it's coming. What we don't realize is that it has come and it is today, not tomorrow. That is the crisis of planning and process that we have. Look at the continuous rise in temperature. 1.5, according to me, is a dream now. Paris or no Paris, temperatures will continue to rise. And there is very little that you can do about it. The second problem with our planning process is that we are trying to create a national program. We are very fond of national programs. I used to also, every world event that I went to, say that India is the first to create a national clean air program, India is the first to create a national cooling program. In climate, it doesn't work. I have now come to realize that every region of India has a different set of problems. Floods will not go away with the same solution that you have created for heat waves. So it has to be a regional planning, a local planning. But this, incidentally, is the easiest thing done and the most difficult thing to implement. Even if resources are made available, even if states or local bodies are told that you do, there is no capacity at that level of planning. I'll give you one example. When the National Clean Air Program was launched, every state government was asked that you submit a plan, we'll give you money accordingly. Believe me, 60% of the plans looked photocopies of each other. Everybody wanted an automated road sweeper. Why does a small town need an automated road sweeper? I can't understand. But everybody does it because the capacity to find a solution is not there. Therefore, if there's a ready-made solution available anywhere, just copy it. That's the easiest thing to do. And that is not going to work. I mean, as government, we have not yet been able to solve our municipal solid waste strategy. Not because the resources are not there. That's of course a problem. But because local capacity to find solutions is less. Therefore, if you really want to fight the climate menace in future, we'll have to create capacities. Educate, create capacity. Train, create capacities. Fund and create capacities. Only then we'll be able to do it. One question that often bothers me is, whose responsibility is it? Who's supposed to do it? Is it government? If the answer is yes, the larger answer is it will never happen. The government cannot and should not be the only source of solution in this. It has to be the society. It has to be everyone put together. People together have to find a solution. Very difficult thing, but I hope we do not delay it and have more losses before we realize that it's important. When COVID was on, we had very clear blue skies. And I remember, I think it was NDTV or some channel which was interviewing me, said, it's so nice to see clear blue skies. I said, I'm pained at these clear blue skies for the simple reason that it has come at a cost which should not have happened. Let us not wait for that cost to come to us. Let us act before that. So people will have to be at the core of the entire thing as far as responsibilities is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, we now know the problem, we now know the solution. But the first sign of solving a problem is acknowledging the problem. We have this inherent tendency of staying in a denial mode. If you are in a denial mode, you never find a solution to the problem. Therefore, it will only happen if you get out of that and then try and find a solution. It's not just about recognition, it's about being accountable. And the recognition plus accountability must lead to a practical solution which is suited to your conditions, your local geography, and your needs. So we need to work on this very seriously, particularly in the impact that it creates on health and education. Ladies and gentlemen, before I end, I have a lament. We have failed our generation. It's time to stand up and plead guilty. At least we can do today is make a better future for the next generation. And if we are unable to do that, our failure just gets compounded. Let us try and create a society in future which is healthier, better, cleaner, whatever you want it to be. We owe it to the next generation, and we must do it. And we must do it with science. But science itself will not be enough. We need the art of delivering results to people for it to succeed. Thank you, Shweta, and the entire team. Earth Warriors, you have a war which is very difficult to fight. All the best to you. So I hope you get going after this and you are able to find some solutions in today's discussion. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being patient.